It was a Sunday evening like any other, the kind that used to mean something to me. Kelly's parents hosted these family dinners almost every week at their place in Charleston, big white house, wraparound porch, string lights in the backyard. It always looked like something out of a home magazine, staged and warm at the same time. Her mom cooked enough food to feed a small army, and everyone showed up hungry, loud, and dressed like they wanted someone to notice. I used to enjoy them. I used to feel included. Now I just went through the motions. Kelly was in her element, of course. Laughing, topping off wine glasses, flitting from person to person like the host even though it wasn't her house. She had this ease about her in those moments, confident, untouchable. Meanwhile, I sat 3 chairs down from her, next to her Uncle Bill, who was mid-rant about politics and not interested in conversation that didn't echo his own. I nodded when I had to, smiled when it felt right, but mostly I stayed quiet, finishing my plate and checking my watch. I wasn't in a rush, but I wanted out. That had become a theme lately. I think I'd checked the time 3 times in 10 minutes when it happened. The moment that changed everything, even if nobody else at that table noticed it at the time. It wasn't some explosive argument. No one stood up and screamed or threw anything. It was subtle, quiet even, but it hit me harder than any shouting match could have. Kelly was leaned in close to her mother, whispering something behind the cover of her wine glass. But it wasn't a true whisper. It was the kind of thing someone says when they want to be overheard, or maybe just didn't care if they were. "She thinks Mark's still trying to get back into shape," Kelly said, then giggled. "God bless him for trying, but no gym can fix that." A burst of laughter followed. Her mother's especially. It was loud and sharp, the kind of laugh that cuts right through the clinking of forks and the small talk around the table. And then just silence in my head. Everything else, the noise, the lights, the smell of gravy and stuffing, blurred and went quiet. I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I just stared straight ahead like maybe if I didn't move, no one would realize that I'd heard it. But I had. And I knew she knew I had. I'd been trying for months. I'd changed my diet, hit the gym after long days at the office, bought clothes I couldn't afford trying to spark something in her again. Not even for vanity, just to feel seen. I wasn't looking for applause. I just wanted to feel like I still mattered to her. That she noticed. Instead, she made me a punchline. In front of her family. With zero hesitation. I let the moment sit. I kept my expression neutral while my stomach flipped and twisted inside me. I remember taking one last bite of dry turkey just to give my hands something to do, like if I kept chewing, maybe I could pretend nothing happened. Maybe I could swallow the insult along with the food. But something in me cracked. Not loudly. Not in an angry, flip the table way. Quietly. Decisively. I folded my napkin slowly, placed it on the edge of my plate, and stood up without saying a word. A few heads turned, but no one asked why I was leaving. That should have said it all. I didn't look at Kelly. I couldn't. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I knew if I met her eyes, I'd either crumble or explode, and I didn't want to give her, or anyone else, the satisfaction of seeing me break. So I walked out. Through the entryway, past the coat rack, out the heavy front door that never closed quite right. The crisp evening air hit me like a slap, cool and clean and full of all the things I hadn't felt inside that house. I kept walking, down the porch steps, past the flower bed Kelly's mom was always bragging about, out to the sidewalk where my car was parked crooked between 2 giant SUVs. I just stood there for a minute, breathing, trying to get my bearings. I could hear faint laughter from inside, someone pouring another drink, the dull thump of music from the kitchen speaker. Life going on, uninterrupted, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been humiliated by the one person who was supposed to have my back. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my keys, and just stared at them in my hand. My fingers were shaking a little. Not from cold. From that bitter cocktail of shame, rage, and disbelief that I hadn't yet figured out how to name. I wasn't even sure what I was angry about more, what she said, or the fact that I wasn't surprised to hear it. Because somewhere along the way I had started expecting this. It didn't used to be like that between us. There was a time when Kelly looked at me like I hung the moon. When she used to pull me aside at parties just to tell me I looked good, or squeeze my hand under the table when her dad got on one of his tangents. But now it felt like she barely tolerated me. Like I was some project she once enjoyed but now regretted starting. And I knew that if I went back inside, nothing would be said about it. She'd act like it was nothing. Like it was just a joke. Like I couldn't take a little teasing. But it wasn't teasing. It was targeted. And it was the final straw. So I got in the car. I didn't start it right away. I just sat there, staring at the glowing dashboard and the reflection of the porch lights in the windshield. I waited for something, maybe for her to come outside, to check on me, to apologize. But she didn't. No one did. Eventually, I turned the key and backed out slowly, my tires crunching over the gravel. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't going back in there. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. And I swear, as I pulled away from that perfect little house with its manicured lawn and warm lights and hollow smiles, I felt something loosen in my chest. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the beginning of it. I didn't drive home. I didn't even know where I was going when I pulled away from Kelly's parents' place. I just needed to put distance between me and the whole damn evening. My phone buzzed once, then twice, sitting face down on the passenger seat, lighting up the dark interior with her name. I didn't check the messages. I didn't want to read the excuses, the casual, "Where are you?" texts like nothing had happened. I wasn't ready for that. So I just drove. Eventually, my car found its way to the water. Not on purpose, it just happened. I took back roads and side streets until the city lights started fading behind me, replaced by salt marsh and silence. I ended up on Sullivan's Island, right near the boardwalk where I'd proposed to Kelly 8 years ago. Same spot. Same bench. The ocean was calm, a dark sheet of glass under the moon, and the wind had a bite to it that I usually liked. But I didn't feel anything. Not the cold. Not the weight of the moment. Just I sat there, elbows on my knees, watching the waves barely rise and fall. My breath fogged in front of me, but I didn't even notice until I saw it catching the streetlight. I thought about that night years ago, when I knelt on one knee in that very spot, holding out a ring I'd saved up for by skipping lunches and side hustling every weekend. I remembered how Kelly cried, how she pulled me up into her arms before even saying yes. That version of her, of us, felt like a dream now. Like someone else's story. What the hell happened to us? I knew I hadn't been perfect. I'd let work consume me some weeks, I'd gotten comfortable, maybe even dull. But I tried. I showed up. I did the little things, grocery runs, late-night pharmacy trips when she had cramps, surprise takeout after her worst days at work. I never stopped trying to be her partner. But that dinner made it painfully clear, none of it mattered to her. Not anymore. Maybe it hadn't for a long time. I sat there on that bench for over an hour. No music. No distractions. Just me and the sound of water lapping against the shore. And for the first time in our marriage, I stopped hoping she'd change. I stopped trying to convince myself things would get better if I just held on a little longer. The switch had flipped. Quietly. Irrevocably. By the time I got home, it was past midnight. The house was dark except for the glow coming from under the bedroom door. She was up. Of course she was. She'd probably been watching my location. That little "find my iPhone" ping was a lifeline she used whenever she felt like pretending she cared. I stepped inside quietly, locked the door behind me, and made my way to the bathroom. I wasn't ready to face her yet. Not while I still felt raw and half-exposed. I flipped on the bathroom light and caught my reflection in the mirror. I almost didn't recognize myself. My eyes looked sunken. Shoulders slumped. Skin a little pale. Like all the spark had been drained out of me. I leaned in closer, studying the lines on my face that I hadn't noticed until now. Stress had aged me, slowly and quietly, and I hadn't even realized how much of myself I'd let go trying to keep a marriage alive by myself. Behind me, I heard the creak of the bedroom door. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her presence there in the hallway. Hovering. Watching. Waiting for me to make the first move. I didn't. I turned off the light, walked past her without a word, and went into the guest room. Closed the door. Clicked the lock. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Pancakes on the stove. Coffee made. Casual, "Morning, babe," like the night before had been just another Sunday. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. But instead, I just said, "Morning," and took my coffee to the patio, where I could breathe without feeling like I was choking on her presence. She didn't follow. And that's when it started. The quiet withdrawal. Not a fight. Not a confrontation. Just a slow retreat into myself. In the days that followed, I stopped asking about her day. I stopped texting her when I was running late or offering to pick things up from the store. I didn't initiate conversations or hugs or anything that used to stitch us together. I became an observer. Detached. Present, but no longer participating. And it didn't take long for her to notice. She started trying harder. Compliments that felt like they'd been written by ChatGPT. "You look good today. Did you change something?" Forced laughs at her own jokes. Longer hugs that I didn't return. But nothing worked because it was too late. The shift had already happened. I was watching her now. Not loving her. Not fighting with her. Just watching. Studying. And what I saw confirmed every instinct I'd buried for months. She left her phone face up, which she never did. Calls from unknown numbers. Texts from names I didn't recognize, John M., Lauren W., initials instead of full names. She laughed a little too loud on work calls. I caught her smiling at texts and turning her screen away as I walked by. And the digs started. Casual ones, just like that dinner. "You really wore that to work today?" You know, some people actually use their gym memberships. If I'd said those things to her, she'd have accused me of emotional abuse. But from her, it was just teasing. Light jokes. But they were barbed, and I felt every single one. I didn't react. Not once. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I just noted it. All of it. I started documenting things. Not for revenge, not yet, but for clarity. Screenshots. Notes. Patterns. If this was the beginning of the end, I wanted to know it inside and out. Because one thing had become painfully clear: the woman I married didn't exist anymore. And I wasn't sure if she ever really had. It's strange how fast things change when you stop trying. When you pull back, not in anger, but in resignation. I didn't leave right away, didn't pack my bags or blow up the house. I just let silence do what words never could. I became a ghost in my own life. Kelly noticed, but not all at once. It was subtle. The first time I didn't say goodnight, she paused in the doorway like she was waiting for something. A kiss, maybe. A smile. I didn't offer either. Just a flat, good night, without looking up from the book I wasn't really reading. The next morning, she made my coffee. Same way I always liked it. Set it down in front of me with a tight smile and a "Morning, babe." I nodded. "No thanks." "No, you too." Just a sip in silence. She started asking questions, soft and cautious. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I'd say." "You've been quiet lately." "Just tired." I didn't lie. I didn't tell her I was fine. I just gave her nothing. And in return, she started unraveling, slowly at first. She began dressing up more than usual, even for small errands. New outfits I hadn't seen. Nails freshly done. Lip gloss for a grocery run. A new phone case, too. Sleek, neutral, harder to see the screen from the side. She always kept it face down, but now she started locking it when she left the room. I noticed. She started working later. At least, that's what she said. I didn't press. When she came home after 9 p.m., flushed and a little breathless, she always had an excuse. Printer jammed at the office, traffic, lost track of time. She'd talk fast, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. I never questioned her. That, more than anything, made her uneasy. Because when I stopped reacting, she started unraveling faster. She picked fights over nothing. Left wet towels on the floor and dared me to call her out. Criticized the way I loaded the dishwasher, the music I played, the way I folded laundry. "You always do it wrong," she said one night, shoving a pile of my clothes back into the basket. "It's like you don't even care." I didn't say a word. Just picked up the basket and walked out of the room. Later that night, I caught her watching me. Not in a loving, nostalgic kind of way. More like she was trying to figure out who I'd become. And maybe she was wondering if she'd lost control. Because that's what this had been about for a while now: control. Power. The subtle way she could dig into me, needle me, make me doubt myself. But it wasn't working anymore. She tried a new tactic next: attention. Touches that felt rehearsed. Slipping into the bathroom while I shaved, brushing her hand down my back as she passed. "You smell good today," she said once, too casually. I nodded. One night, she came into the guest room in just a t-shirt, one of mine, and stood in the doorway with that same playful look she used to give me when we were still new. I didn't look up from my laptop. After a few seconds, she turned and walked away. I think that was the night she realized I wasn't coming back. The next few days were oddly quiet. She stopped trying so hard. Stopped pretending. And that's when I caught her slipping. A smile that lingered too long while texting. A FaceTime call that ended too quickly when I walked in. I didn't say anything. Just walked back out and wrote down the time, the date, the number I'd seen on the screen. I started pulling documents from drawers. Financial records. Insurance info. Anything with my name on it. Opened a new email account, set up two-factor authentication. Used a secure folder on an external drive. This wasn't paranoia. It was prep. Then came the Sunday. We used to spend Sundays together: farmer's market, brunch, lazy errands. That weekend, I left without a word. Drove to a small town 2 hours away and spent the whole day walking around, talking to no one. Had coffee with a view of the river, read a book cover to cover in a corner booth of a diner that didn't take credit cards. It was quiet, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel watched. When I got back, Kelly was pacing the living room. "Where were you?" she asked, voice tight. I shrugged. "Out." "Out where?" "Just out." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. "You didn't answer your phone." "I didn't hear it." Her eyes narrowed. "You always have it on you." "Not yesterday." She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came. The silence between us was heavy, like a wall, thick and immovable. She crossed her arms and turned away. I went to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. That was the beginning of the end, and we both felt it. What she didn't know was that I'd already had an offer on the table, a job in Nashville I'd been sitting on for 3 months. Better pay, more independence, a fresh start. I hadn't considered it seriously before. Now, I was calling the recruiter back. Lining things up. Apartment tours. Budget spreadsheets. I was preparing an exit. Not with anger. Not with revenge in mind. Just freedom. And the best part? She didn't even see it coming. It wasn't until I stopped asking that she really started to panic. At first, it was just confusion. She couldn't figure out what changed. I was still there, same house, same routines, but something about me was off, and she knew it. She'd walk into a room and pause, waiting for me to say something. But I didn't. Not about her hair, her outfit, her day. I didn't ask where she was going or when she'd be home. And when she did come back, I didn't ask how it went. I could see it in her eyes, how she was waiting for me to confront her, demand answers, even yell. But I gave her none of that. I just kept existing next to her like a stranger wearing her husband's skin. One Thursday, she asked if I wanted to go to a dinner party at her coworker's place. Normally, I'd say yes without thinking, play the good husband, shake hands, smile through it. This time, I didn't even look up from my laptop. "No thanks," I said. She blinked. "You don't want to go?" "Nope." She hesitated, arms crossed, like she wasn't sure if I was joking. "You always go to these things." "I don't want to tonight." The silence between us stretched until it became uncomfortable. Then she muttered something under her breath and walked off. She didn't bring it up again. Later that night, I heard her pacing the bedroom on the phone, her voice hushed but tense. "I don't know what his deal is. He's just different lately." "No, I don't think he knows." That made me laugh a little. "No, Kelly. I knew. I just wasn't playing your game anymore." The next Sunday, I left again. No explanation. No note. I woke up early, packed a backpack, and drove 6 hours into the mountains. I hiked until my legs burned, turned off my phone, and let the silence soak in like sunlight. I sat by a lake and watched the water ripple, thinking about nothing. No guilt. No stress. No one asking where I was or what time I'd be home. I hadn't realized how heavy it all was until I wasn't carrying it anymore. When I got back that night, there were 7 missed calls. For texts. She even called my sister. That was new. And that was when I knew I'd passed some invisible line in her mind. The shift from annoyance to fear. Because I was no longer acting like someone who cared. I was acting like someone preparing to leave. Which of course I was. I'd spent the last 2 weeks quietly opening new accounts. Banks, email, phone plan. I scanned important documents, passport, tax returns, marriage certificate, and saved them on an encrypted drive. I got pre-approved for an apartment in Nashville. Small place, 1 bedroom, but it overlooked the river and had exposed brick and hardwood floors. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. Just mine. And I kept everything close to the chest. Not out of pettiness, but because I didn't owe her any more explanations. She'd made her choices. The version of her that used to share things with me, build with me, was long gone. And I wasn't going to beg her to show up again. One evening, she came into the living room while I was on the couch, laptop open, researching movers. "Are we okay?" she asked. It caught me off guard, mostly because it was so direct. So unlike her. I looked up slowly. "Why wouldn't we be?" She looked genuinely thrown. "I don't know. You've just been distant." "Have I?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. She nodded. "Yeah. Like, I don't know. You're here, but you're not here." I closed the laptop gently. Met her eyes. "Maybe I'm just tired." She studied me, unsure if I meant the day or the relationship. "Maybe both." "Well, if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here," she said softly. I almost laughed. The irony of it was incredible. I'd been trying to talk for months, years even, and every time I got sarcasm, dismissal, or worse, indifference. Now that I'd gone quiet, now she wanted to talk? "Sure," I said, giving her nothing. "I'll keep that in mind." She left the room, and I went back to planning. 2 days later, the job offer came through. Start date confirmed. I gave notice at work under the radar and used vacation time to cover the transition. My boss didn't even blink. He knew I'd been looking. Hell, he even said, "I was wondering what was keeping you here." I didn't tell him it was a woman I didn't recognize anymore. The night before everything would shift, I stood in the kitchen watching her pour herself a glass of wine. She was scrolling on her phone, laughing at something, completely unaware that her life was about to change. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just done. Done fighting for someone who didn't fight for me. Done pretending that love was enough when the respect had long since rotted out from under it. I'd loved her. Deeply. But love can't fix someone who enjoys watching you drown while they stand on the shore. That was the truth I hadn't wanted to face. But I saw it now. And in the quiet that followed as she wandered off into the other room, I stared at my packed bag hidden in the coat closet and thought, "I'm ready." She was curled up on the couch that night, half watching some reality show she always swore she didn't like. One leg tucked under her, wine glass in hand, scrolling through her phone with the other. I stood across from her, silent, for a full 10 seconds before she even realized I was there. She looked up and smiled, like it was any other Tuesday. "What's up?" I took a breath. "I heard what you said to your mom." Her smile faltered, and I saw it. The flicker in her eyes, that millisecond of calculation before her face reset. She tilted her head like she didn't understand. "At dinner?" I clarified. "The thing about the gym. About me." She blinked once. Twice. Then leaned back, taking a sip of wine like she needed the pause. "Oh," she said, dragging the word out like she was trying to find a way to spin it. Mark, come on. That was just a joke." "A joke," I repeated flat. "You know how my family is," she said, voice lighter than it needed to be. "We tease. That's how we show love." I didn't respond right away. I walked to the coffee table, set down an envelope with my name and hers on the front, and placed a small set of keys beside it. "What's this?" she asked, still trying to read me. I sat across from her, arms resting on my knees, calm as I'd ever been. "I'm moving to Nashville," I said. "Job offer came through a couple weeks ago." I accepted it. I leave Friday. She laughed, quick, forced, disbelieving. Wait, you're serious? I nodded. She stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. Is this some kind of joke? You're just leaving? I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said. I'm doing it because it's already over. You just didn't want to be the one to say it. Her face changed then. The wine glass came down on the table, harder than necessary. Over? What are you talking about? We've had some rough patches, yeah, but we're not. This isn't. Mark, come on. I didn't flinch. You flirt with guys at work like it's your side gig. You make jokes at my expense, even in front of your family. You shut me out for months. And the worst part? You think I didn't notice. She shook her head like I was speaking a foreign language. That's not fair. Don't, I said, holding up a hand. Don't spin this into something it's not. I'm not here to argue. I'm not looking for an apology. I just want you to hear the truth. I waited a beat. She was frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open like she had a dozen things to say but couldn't pick one. I stopped loving you the moment I realized you stopped respecting me, I said, voice steady. And I think you know exactly when that was. Her lip trembled, and for a second, I thought she might actually cry. But instead, she laughed again, short, bitter, empty. So that's it? You're just walking out? I already did, I said. You just didn't notice. She looked down, finally opening the envelope. Inside was a copy of the lease for my new apartment, a forwarding address, and a breakdown of the shared accounts I was removing myself from. I'd already split the savings evenly, already canceled the joint credit cards, left her with the house, the furniture, even the damn espresso machine she made me drive 2 hours to pick up when we first moved in. I didn't want any of it. You really planned all this? She whispered, voice cracking now. Yeah. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, so that's it. You didn't even want to try. That made me pause. Not because it wasn't true, but because of the hypocrisy of it. I did try, Kelly, I said. I tried every day for the last 2 years while you made me feel small. I tried when I worked late so we could pay off your car. I tried when I asked you, gently, quietly, what was going on and you rolled your eyes like I was pathetic. You don't get to say I didn't try. Her hands were clenched in her lap now, knuckles white. You blindsided me. No, I said. You just weren't paying attention. There was nothing else to say after that. She didn't argue, didn't reach for me, didn't beg. I think deep down she knew this day was coming. Maybe she thought she'd be the one to pull the plug when it suited her. Maybe she thought I'd always stick around. I did too for a while. But sitting across from her now, watching her finally realize she wasn't in control anymore, I felt nothing. No hate. No rage. Just release. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked to the door. She didn't follow. She didn't say my name. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. She didn't call that night. She blew up my phone. 27 missed calls, texts that started calm. Please, we can fix this, and spiraled into rage, threats, desperate guilt trips. The next day, she called my sister. Then my mom. She even messaged my boss on LinkedIn to make sure I was okay. Classic Kelly. When the control slips, the performance starts. At the house, she unraveled. I heard from a mutual friend she showed up to brunch crying, saying I'd abandoned her. But no one bought it. Not after the years of stories I never told but they'd pieced together anyway. By the time she realized I wasn't coming back, not just physically but emotionally, I was already halfway unpacked in Nashville. The first night in my apartment, I sat on the floor with a six-pack and no furniture. No sound but the hum of the fridge. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was failing. I felt free. There were no jabs. No eggshells. No one waiting to twist my silence into guilt. Just me. A quiet space. The river outside. She still tried, even weeks later. Voicemails, long emails, one weird handwritten letter. I didn't respond to any of it. Because it wasn't about punishing her. It was about choosing peace over permission. I didn't leave her out of anger. I left her because I finally remembered who I was before she made me feel like I was never enough. And I wasn't interested in forgetting again.